become a safety and nuisance problem for the residents in those streets? And 2, can Council provide a timeline on progress on the following major projects? A, New Lotteries House. B, the JC's Park subdivision for not-for-profit building sites. C, the Stirling Street Arts Centre refurbishment and extension, including the Exhibitions and Performance Rehearsal Centre. D, the Friendship Gardens and Queen's Gardens. E, the environmental engineering studies required for the marina. And F, the new fire station in Blair Street opposite the racetrack.
Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to question 1, Council officers will work with the successful tenderer on an appropriate traffic management plan to address the issues. Question 2, we will treat those as correspondence and a response provided.
Thank you. So I move the minutes of the last ordinary council meeting. Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Hayward, all in favour?
Excuse me, sir.
That's carried.
I'd like to know why my questions on notice were not printed, and I'd also like to know why it states that on the back of the paper that there is a motions on notice nil when there was a motion on notice and it was not allowed. So it should read motion on notice received, not allowed, and it also should say questions on notice received, not allowed. So the minutes are incorrect, sir.
You weren't present at that meeting, Councillor Steck. Those minutes are confirmed.
Nevertheless, my questions were put and they should require an answer. You can say take a seat, but you know the process.
You do too, Councillor Steck. Petition. Are there any petitions, councillors? Presentations. We have a request from Catherine Dew and Alex Dew, who both wish to speak on item 10.4.2. Council in agreement, please indicate. That's approved. Mr Smith seeks leave to speak to item 10.4.4. Those who approve, please indicate. Those who don't. That's 6 all. That request is denied. Catherine Dew and Alex Dew, when we get to your item, I'll invite you to come forward.
Thank you.
So, councillors, coming out at this stage, items 10.2.4, 10.4.1, 10.4.2. Are there any other items that anyone wishes to discuss? Councillor McCleary. Any further? Councillor Cook. I beg your pardon. Councillor Steele's report. Someone move that? Yeah, well, perhaps Councillor Steele would like to second it. All in favour? Thank you. Carried. Sorry, Councillor Steele. So we've got 10.23 coming out. Any further items? Okay, can I have someone move the balance, please? Councillor Cook. Councillor Hayward, all in favour? That's carried. Thank you. 10.2.3, we'll just get to that item. Can someone move the recommendation, please? Councillor Hayward, seconder. Councillor Jones. Councillor Hayward.
I just encourage councillors to support it. I think it's been a process that we've been working through, and I think that the feedback we've had from our people and no doubt the clubs is that they've found a position in which we're happy with and we can move forward. I think it's important that we get on and get the job done, so I'd urge you to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Perhaps in the days when we didn't consider whole-of-life asset management for our council assets, the result may have been different, but in respect to this, I think the council's making a very good move that should be applied to all new council assets, and this will be the benchmark for such asset management.
Thank you. Councillor McCreary, you're speaking against, or do you have a question?
Speaking against, Mr Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I support the process of the leasing of the multi-sports complex. However, the proposed agreement currently before Council is incomplete and requires further negotiation and consultation. As it stands, it would be fiscally irresponsible to execute this agreement. As councillors, we have a duty of care to our ratepayers. It would be prudent to lay this recommendation on the table to allow for further consultation with the proposed lessees. Thank you.
Speaker 4. Councillor Hayward, close.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary, for that. I don't have the same view as Councillor McCleary with this. I think that it's important we move on and get it done. We've always said that we'd give these people a leg up so they could get started and we could make an assessment along the way. This piece of infrastructure is going to be good for our community and good for our young people and others who use this facility. And I just encourage you to get behind it and support it. Thank you.
I'll put it all in favour, please indicate. Those against.
Name, please.
2. Councillor McCleary records her name against. And you want yours recorded too, Councillor Steele? Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Giles, thank you. Someone move this recommendation. We're up to 10-4. Councillor Morris, second up. Councillor McCleary. Likely to be any debate on this, councillors? Sorry, Councillor Steele, I'll ask Councillor Morris if he wishes to speak. Councillor McCleary, do you wish to speak? Speaker against, Councillor Steele.
Okay. Last week I did ask for the MOU background to be changed, but it actually hasn't been changed in this week's agenda, so that can possibly change before the minutes. I'm going to remain consistent and vote against selling of this land. I feel it should have gone out to tender for everybody to have a chance to buy this land. I'm very concerned about the parking. I'm concerned on many things of how we've got to this thing. Though we've actually accepted a formal valuation, I think it should have gone out to tender. Morally, I just cannot vote for this.
Speaker 4. Councillor Morris, do you wish to close? I'll put it all in
Sorry,
favour.
sir, can I have a question?
You can ask a question.
What happens to the parking meters after we build this, 3-4 stories and the paper printed 5 or 6 stories? We don't even know how many stories we're going to develop. The whole thing is up in the air. So what's going to happen with the parking meters? Go back to the question.
The parking, the proposed development, if it goes ahead, Councillor Steck, if it goes ahead, will include public car parking. And that's been pointed out to us by
My
the
question
proponent.
was what happens to the car parking meters that we already have down Victoria Street? Have we had a proper business case, and have we had those statistics brought back to us, which is like the CBE Richard Ellis, or those people that specialise in these things? No, we haven't. What's going to happen to the parking meters? I want to know the answer, please.
I'll put this matter all in favour, please indicate. Those against. 2. Councillor Steele records against.
And I also note no answer to my question.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Someone prepared to move the recommendation. Councillor Jones, is there a seconder? Councillor McCleary, any debate on this? I'll put it all in favour. That's carried unanimously, thank you. 10.4.2. So, is Mrs. Dew, Catherine Dew, are you okay to speak now, or would you prefer Alex to go first? You're fine. Come forward. Thanks. So welcome along. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening. I'm not very good at this, very nervous. As regards 6 Garvey Place, which I think you're all probably aware of, we were a little bit disadvantaged because when the original plans went through for the parapet wall and the extension of Enable, we were actually out of the country, and when we returned it was all signed and sealed. Now 6 Garvey Place is a very small little backyard. It's in a little triangle area, and to have this high parapet wall that they have proposed and now wanting an extension on, it's definitely imposing on us, with light, air, shading, and the winter warmth. So we really are totally opposed to it. I just wanted to say that first up. Also, we were approached after that by Enable, and they would talk to us and they were wanting us to sign agreement that we were happy for them to take our fence down. And they said that we would, actually no, beg your pardon, they said our fence wouldn't be touched, because I said, what about my garden? Because I'd just like to show you, I have a beautiful garden out the back, and I'll get to that in a moment. And they said that won't be touched, the wall will be behind. That's fine. And then as time progressed, we had a meeting. They brought the lawyer and architect, James, I think, Devlin, from the Devlin Constructions, and someone from Enable, encouraging us, what's holding us up? Sign the paper, we want to, because now we need to take the fence down to do the parapet wall. And we wanted to wait to talk to council because we didn't get to speak the first time to you, because it was pressure. We didn't know what we're supposed to do. So I rang council to get some information because we had pressure with all the meeting, and Alec was thought, well, they have had approval for their construction that was to start, and a part of the parapet wall, and he actually signed. But then on signing, we had the builder from Devlin Constructions tell us that actually we need to put a fence inside on your lawn. We need to take out this garden or cut it back so that we could put scaffolding there, and then the fence behind it in our yard. Now this is a very small yard. We have a little baby. We love to be out in the fresh air. So it was very imposing. We rang and I actually told him, I said, once we signed that, then things changed. It went from not having to touch your fence to we have to touch your fence, to cut your garden out, the trees out the front the same, to build a parapet wall. I've got Chinese elms all down the driveway. They want to trim them right across the back for them to do their wall. So they seem to be getting everything. We get the sacrifices when we don't want the wall in the first place. So yet again, we do object to it, and it has a huge impact on us. I think the fact that it will impact on the property. We contacted real estate, and they said for Tree Street area that will have a big impact if you have a parapet wall on real estate value, and also their clients that would be interested to look at a property there with a parapet wall. So yet again, I just want to reiterate, we feel a little bit like we're in actually I put it as a construction site at the moment because we have a problem with, if I give them the okay to come and put up, for me to have security fences, I have to give them okay that they can either take out my garden, which they have already done the footings today, and they've skinned off the back. Now that is where they want to take down, either take it out, they said, or you can't take out a 6-metre rose bush like that and save it in the middle of the summer, or cut it off so they can put their scaffolding on the top of the garden out the back. So we feel like we're in excuse me, puffing, a war zone a little bit, like construction, because we have no fences, we have no privacy, we have no security. We have a small backyard with this little one, and we want to leave every day because to have all the goings on there.
Mrs. Dew, I'm sorry, can you just summarise now?
The summarisation is that I propose that, strongly urge you to reject the proposal of the height alteration that has been proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. G.
Fellow councillors, as Catherine has stated, we are totally opposed to the initial plans of the building, but we're unable to do anything about it because we're overseas. But now it has been brought to our attention that the approved drawings, the previous eaves gutter is found to be not suitable or does not comply with the Building Code of Australia. Now, whether this was a mistake or something that was overlooked by the designers in the original proposal, or what we feel was a deliberate effort to have the plans and wall approved, someone definitely did not act with due diligence. Likewise, I would also like to make the same point that the council planning officer and the executive planning officer and their staff who considered these initial plans with the non-compliance of the eaves and the gutters on the boundary of our property also have not acted with due diligence. I have personally spoken to the person in Deans who is in charge of the plans for this project, and they said a drop-down box gutter could be incorporated with no changes to the already approved wall height. They said it would take extra work, it may require extra cost, but it could be accommodated in the height that has already been approved of. We have spoken with a number of real estate agents who have all said any boundary wall above the normal height of about 18 or 1900 millimetres would definitely greatly decrease the value of the property in our area. It would reduce the number of people who would look at it, and obviously the higher the wall goes, the more impact that is going to have on the property in question. So I ask you, sitting members of the council, to consider your reactions if this was your property that was being affected. How would you feel and react to it? And so, just in conclusion, I'd like to thank you all for listening and urge you all to vote against any recommendation whatsoever to lift or increase the height of this parapet wall that is already far too high for that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. G. CEO, can I, through you, seek comment from our planning staff? The issues that have been raised by Mr. and Mrs. Dew, have they been addressed, or can they be addressed by negotiation with the proponent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In essence, if I may frame the problem in simple terms, the request for the original development was to a certain height, and it was just under the 3.5 metres. That planning approval went through, that's what was requested. It was only down the track that it was detected that there would be an issue around achieving the appropriate Building Code of Australia requirements for the design of the wall. Yes, there are ways to do it. They are potentially going to be a lot more expensive, and therefore they came back for a very minor amendment that's really measured only in fractions of inches to accommodate the design facility. That said, even then, it still falls within the policy of acceptable. because the enable block is approximately 43 centimetres lower than the adjoining block. So therefore, their wall will still only be around 3.5 metres high, as experienced from the adjoining landowner, which is the acceptable height under the policy. Therefore, going back to the developer and requesting that they go technically below the policy height and incurring a significant cost was something that we did not pursue necessarily.
Okay, thank you. Someone prepared to move the executive recommendation?
I have a question. Can I ask a question, please?
You can ask a question.
Thank you. Can I, through you, the Mayor and the CEO, I take the information that was just been given, but what about the impact on the neighbour's garden and during the construction phase? Has that been taken into account at all? Is there any way we can mitigate that?
Mr. CEO?
Because it's their land, after all.
With the densification of the city and with people now investing and building larger site, this is going to be an issue that we're going to experience more and more often. It really comes down to people being reasonable and being tolerant. It would be two ways. So there's a two-way relationship here. The issues around landowners' rights and access to property is dealt with through building legislation. There is a form that they have been asked to sign to give legal right of access to conduct those works. That is dealt with through those processes under the Building Commission, etc. They're not matters or scope within planning. A bit like dividing fences, they fall into a different head of power. And usually what we seek to do as much as possible, whilst we don't get drawn into how someone tromps their boots on someone else's flowers, we do try and encourage people to be respectful. That certainly has been raised, and we are satisfied that we've conveyed those concerns to the developer.
Thank you. Someone prepared to move? Councillor McCreary?
Sorry, sir, I have a question.
No, just take it. Sorry, Councillor McCreary, were you moving? A question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. For what reason is Enable raising the level of their parapet wall?
I think Mr Farnsworth might have touched on that, but would you mind just repeating the reason for it?
There's a detailed reason in relation to the design of the wall to accommodate appropriate gutters and drainage. Because it's a parapet wall, it doesn't mean you're allowed to have any discharge of rainwater across that property boundary. Therefore, the solution has to be exactly right. To fit that box gutter in, they found they were really only millimetres out, but legally it must be correct. Therefore, they've asked for an amendment just to accommodate a slightly different shaped gutter, which changes the profile of the wall. I may draw attention, it's not for the full length. It's actually only for a relatively small, it wouldn't be even length of this table. So it's only a small length, it's not the entire length of the wall.
Councillor Steck, question?
Thank you, sir. And given the advice I just received, I even have a further question. My question is simply this. Given there is a parapet wall, and given we are now presiding over this matter, number one, why don't we have the conditions attached or in the documentation? Because we don't. We only have 2 submissions received from owners. So, number one question, where are the conditions attached to this? The parapet wall, the executive officers have given us some kind of explanation. It's only this big, but when you're trampling on other people's boots on other people's gardens, as it's been put, boots on flowers actually was the correct terminology, what the staff has said. I want to know exactly how far that is. And just because we say it's only this big, when you have water that's being pushed over, will the water be pushed into the neighbour's yard, or will it be pushed back to the proponent's yard? These are things and questions that we do not have answers to because they're not written. So there are 2 questions. Number 1, as I said, and number 2, where will the offload water be put on the parapet wall? On the proponent's side or on the neighbour's side?
Thank you, Councillor Steck. I think you'll find that DPDRS 3, copy of development approval, you can see recommendation number 1 there. Bunbury noting the original conditions and notes as attached to Appendix DRS3 are still applicable. Mr. CEO, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And Mr. Farnsworth, how big is this? 3 metres?
Your Worship, just referencing the attached plans, you'll notice an outdoor courtyard area, and the exact dimensions defeat my eyes at the moment. But from my memory, it falls to around 3 to 4 metres long.
Thank you.
That little area there.
Thank you, councillors. Let's get moving here. Can I have someone move it? Councillor Hayward, is there a seconder? Councillor Cook. Councillor Hayward.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor. I'm certainly disappointed to hear the experience of our ratepayers, particularly in relation to what's happened with their garden beds and others. And this is a problem that's happened that we've seen happen on a number of occasions. I think that largely at some point at council we need to see what we can do about improving that experience for people. It's also very disappointing that the residents were out of the country as well. There's not much we can do about that. There is already an approval in place. So what is in front of us to make a decision about is whether we can approve this small height to accommodate the requirements under the building code. And I suspect if we don't approve them, that we're leaving ourselves fairly wide open to potential legal action and others, because as our officers already pointed out, that it is within the available limits. Now, I know that the experience for our ratepayers has been less than what any of us would want, and I'm certainly very sympathetic about their situation. But ultimately, this decision is not going to change the fact there is going to be a parapet wall in the backyard, and there are laws that say that people can have access to facilitate that building. Those adjacent property owners have rights, ones that also need to be protected, and that we need to also consider. So I don't see that we actually have a great deal of choice. I think we have to approve it, and again, I hope, and I certainly hope that our officers and others can feed back to the developer that really we'd be expecting best practice in terms of their relationship with these people, and we want to make sure that any disturbance is in fact rectified, and that they're very generous in terms of their dealings with them. That would be my view. So I don't see that we really have a choice. I think it needs to be approved, and I'd encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor Hayward summed it up pretty well, really. I would certainly hope that the developers and Mr and Mrs Dew can get on, and that the landscaping and gardening is restored to its original state. This is only an amendment. We've already approved the development, so councillors, I'd urge you to vote in the affirmative. Thank you.
Speaker against? I'll put it. All in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Okay, councillors, thank you very much for your attendance this evening. I think we're number 13. Just hang on a sec, Councillor Steck. Okay. They're just for noting 13.2. Okay, thank you everybody. I declare this meeting closed at 6 p.m.